We spend our whole lives believing we're experiencing reality directly, but the truth is that our brain lets us see only a tiny fraction of what's happening around us. Right now, your mind is ignoring the feeling of your heartbeat against your ribs, the shifting weight of your clothes, the faint sounds behind the walls, and even the tiny muscle twitches in your face. All of that is happening, but you don't notice it because your brain quietly pushes it into the background. This filtering is automatic. It has one job: protect you from getting overwhelmed. But this protective system has a side effect no one talks about. The filter doesn't decide what to hide based on the present moment. It hides things based on what you've already lived through. It uses old memories to decide what matters. It uses past fear to flag what looks dangerous. It uses habits to predict how you'll react. It uses beliefs you learned years ago, sometimes from people who were stressed, confused, or just doing their best at the time. This means most of what you notice each day isn't shaped by what's actually happening. It's shaped by what your brain expects to happen. Two people can walk into the same room and have completely different experiences, not because the room is different, but because their filters are. Here's what makes this even more surprising. Your brain doesn't just filter out physical sensations. It filters out emotional patterns too. If you grew up being told to stay quiet, the filter hides opportunities to speak. If you learned that conflict is dangerous, the filter highlights every small sign of tension. If you've spent years feeling stressed, the filter becomes so used to stress that it starts noticing stress even when it's not there. The filter isn't trying to hurt you. It's trying to keep you familiar. But familiar isn't always healthy. This is why so many people feel stuck without knowing why. They're not trapped by life. They're trapped by a filter they never realized was shaping their choices. Most Americans live in fast environments filled with constant noise, deadlines, notifications, traffic, expectations. Because of that pace, the filter tightens even more. It learns to block subtle emotional signals, quiet intuition, and small moments of awareness that could actually help us. We miss what could guide us because the filter thinks we don't need it. But here's the good news. The filter isn't fixed. It updates when you become conscious of it. The moment you notice a pattern, a repeated reaction, a familiar fear, a thought you didn't choose, you've already stepped outside the filter for a second. That tiny moment of awareness is a crack in the system. And once there's a crack, new perception can get in. Understanding this hidden filter is the starting point for every form of energy work, spiritual clarity, and personal awakening. You don't need to force anything. You don't need to escape your life. You simply need to recognize that your mind is not showing you the whole picture. And once you see that, even briefly, a bigger reality starts to open. Attention isn't just looking at something. It's the force that decides what becomes real in your experience. Think of your mind like an old radio sitting on a kitchen counter. The station you tune into determines what fills the room. If the dial lands on static, you hear noise. If it lands on music, the whole space feels different. Your attention works the same way. Wherever you place it, your inner world rearranges itself to match that signal. This isn't a metaphor. It's how the brain actually functions. Your mind is constantly firing millions of electrical impulses, but it only strengthens the pathways you use most. If you repeatedly focus on worry, the brain widens that mental pathway until worry becomes the default frequency. If you focus on calm or clarity, the brain shapes itself around that instead. Neuroscientists call this plasticity. Spiritual teachers call it energy alignment. Both are describing the same thing through different languages. Here's the part most people never realize. Attention doesn't just highlight certain thoughts. It changes how your nervous system behaves. When your attention rests on stress, your breathing tightens, your shoulders rise, your heartbeat shifts. When your attention rests on possibility, the body softens, breath deepens, and energy begins to flow in smoother patterns. Your attention is literally signaling your body which frequency to play. American life moves fast. Speed pulls the mind outward, phones buzzing, deadlines stacking, news flashing. When your attention is constantly scattered, your inner frequency becomes scattered too. You begin reacting to life instead of directing it. And once attention becomes fragmented, energy becomes fragmented. This is why so many people feel drained even after doing nothing physically exhausting. Their energy wasn't wasted through effort. It was wasted through unfocused attention. But attention isn't fixed. It can be trained the same way you train a muscle. The more you practice guiding it, the stronger it becomes. When you choose what to focus on instead of letting the world decide for you, your entire inner system shifts. Thoughts change. Emotions change. Even the way you interpret events changes. You stop tuning into noise and start tuning into clarity. Attention is the remote control of your energy. What you hold it on becomes louder. What you withdraw it from becomes quiet. And the moment you understand that, you gain access to a level of inner control most people never realize they have. Every emotion your body produces is more than a feeling. It's a signal, a shift, a real energetic event moving through your system. Stress doesn't just make you stressed. It pulls your shoulders forward, tightens your jaw, quickens your breath, and sends your energy into a defensive posture. Anxiety shortens your inhale and makes your chest feel smaller, as if your body is trying to protect your heart. Peace slows your heartbeat and relaxes the muscles around your eyes. Joy changes your posture without you noticing, opening your chest and lifting your face as if the body is letting more energy move through. None of this is random. Your nervous system, hormones, breath patterns, and muscles all respond to emotions the same way an instrument responds to a musician. Different emotions activate different frequencies inside the body. In everyday American life, people describe this without even realizing it. They say things like, "I got a weird vibe," "My gut told me something was off," "The energy felt heavy," or "The room felt good the second I walked in." These aren't poetic phrases. They are literal descriptions of emotional frequencies. The body picks up before the mind catches up. Your body reads emotional energy faster than your thoughts do. If someone is angry, you often feel it in your chest before you hear their tone. If a situation is unsafe, your stomach tightens before your mind forms the thought. If someone kind walks into the room, your nervous system relaxes slightly even before you speak to them. This is your internal energetic radar, and it's far older and more reliable than conscious thinking. Here's the part most people miss. Emotions don't just react to your environment, they shape it. Your emotional state changes the way you hear people, the way you interpret events, and even the opportunities you notice. A person who feels defeated will walk past the same chance that someone hopeful would immediately recognize. Not because life is different for each one, but because their emotional frequency is tuning them into different outcomes. When you begin to understand emotions as signals, not obstacles, not weaknesses, not random chemical reactions, you gain power over them. You stop being pushed around by every shift in mood. You stop believing every anxious story your mind tells. You start recognizing that emotions are messages about your internal energy state, not absolute truths about the world. And once you see emotions as signals, you can respond to them instead of being controlled by them. You can adjust your breath, shift your attention, observe the pattern, and change the energy before it becomes your reaction. You move from being shaped by your emotions to shaping the energy behind them. And that single shift changes everything. Your past doesn't stay in your mind the way most people think. It leaves traces in the body, subtle reactions that become so normal you don't even question them. A childhood embarrassment doesn't disappear when you grow up. It settles into your chest as a tightness that shows up every time you feel exposed. A betrayal from years ago becomes a small knot in your stomach that activates whenever someone gets too close. Long months of pressure from a job you hated live on as tension in your shoulders, even when your life has changed. These imprints are not imaginary. They're the body's memory system, the emotional version of muscle memory. When something painful or stressful happens, your nervous system records it. not as a story, as a reaction. And once that reaction becomes familiar, the body repeats it automatically. You feel the tightening before you think the thought. You feel the heat before you understand the emotion. The body responds first. The mind explains it later. This is why people sometimes don't trust their own feelings. They think they're reacting to the present moment, when they're actually reacting to a past moment stored in their tissues. Two people can hear the same sentence and have completely different responses, not because the sentence was different, but because the body's imprint was different. The body remembers what the mind tries to forget. Modern neuroscience calls this implicit memory. Spiritual teachers call it trapped energy. Both are describing the same thing, an old signal still running in the system long after the event is gone. American life often makes these imprints stronger. Fast schedules, constant stress, unresolved emotions, and years of just push through it create layer after layer of stored tension. The body becomes a container for experiences you never had time to process. Eventually, the imprint feels like part of your personality, even though it is. It's just old energy waiting to be released. The shift begins when you notice these patterns. You put your hand on your chest during anxiety and realize the feeling isn't new, it's familiar. You sense the stomach tightening and suddenly remember where it started. Awareness doesn't erase the imprint instantly, but it breaks the automatic pattern. It puts space where there used to be reflex. And inside that space, your energy can finally move again. When you understand that these reactions are imprints, not identity, you stop fighting yourself. You stop calling it weakness. You stop blaming your emotions. Instead, you see them as stored signals from moments that shaped you. And once you see them clearly, you can release them gently, consistently, and consciously. This is how you reclaim energy you didn't even know you were losing. Physics tells us something strange. The moment you observe a particle, you change how it behaves. You're not just watching, you're participating. What most people never realize is that this same principle applies to the mind. The very instant you become aware of a thought, feeling, or reaction, you shift its entire pattern. You're no longer inside the experience. You're looking at it. And that single act of noticing breaks the automatic spell. Think about how stress works. When you're caught in it, it feels like the world is closing in. Your breath tightens, your thoughts speed up, and your body reacts before you can think. But the moment you pause and say to yourself, "I'm feeling stressed right now," something changes. You haven't solved anything yet, but you've stepped out of the reaction and into awareness. Stress stops being the whole story and becomes something happening inside you. That shift creates space, and space gives you influence. Most Americans move so fast that experiences blur together. Stress, worry, irritation, pressure all blend into one ongoing state. But when you observe what's happening, even for a second, you interrupt the loop. The nervous system softens. The mind slows down enough to see what's real instead of what's feared. You stop reacting out of habit and start responding with clarity. This isn't passive watching. Observation is active participation. When you see a pattern clearly, you stop feeding it. When you name a reaction, you weaken it. When you acknowledge a feeling, you bring it into awareness instead of letting it run your behavior from the shadows. The mind loses its grip when you shine light on it. In spiritual science, this is the foundational truth. What you observe, you influence. What you avoid controls you. What you notice begins to change. Awareness doesn't erase challenges, but it changes your relationship to them. You stop drowning in emotions and start recognizing them as waves passing through your system. You stop believing every thought and start choosing which ones deserve your focus. You stop living on autopilot and start shaping your inner world with intention. Observation is the first act of creation. It turns unconscious reactions into conscious choices. And once you can choose, you can change your entire energy field. Your mind never stops projecting. Every second, it's running a private movie that shapes how you feel, how you act, and even what opportunities you notice. These inner movies are built from expectations, fears, memories, and stories you didn't even realize you were telling yourself. And the wild part is this: your body reacts to these inner movies as if they're happening in real life. If the movie in your mind shows you failing, your muscles tense, your breath shortens, and your energy shrinks before anything has even happened. If the movie shows you succeeding, your body opens, your breath deepens, and your whole system prepares for possibility. This isn't imagination, it's biology. The brain responds to mental images almost the same way it responds to real events. That's why a memory can make your stomach twist, and a future worry can ruin your mood. Your nervous system doesn't pause to ask, is this happening now, or just in my head? It reacts instantly to the movie you're playing. American culture talks about this without realizing it. People say things like, I psyched myself out, I jinxed it, I kept picturing the worst. These are all ways of saying the inner movie shaped the outer outcome. Athletes visualize their routines until the body performs them automatically. Musicians rehearse mentally and still improve. Speakers imagine the room before they step on stage. They're not using magic. They're using the brain's built-in simulation system, the one all of us run all day long without any awareness. Here's the important part. Most people don't choose their mental movies. The movies come from old fears, old beliefs, old experiences that never got updated. You see a conversation in your mind going badly because 10 years ago, something similar went badly. You imagine being rejected because a younger version of you was. You don't realize the movie you're watching is based on an outdated script. And yet that script shapes your energy right now. It changes how you walk into a room. It changes how you speak, how you breathe, how you interpret other people. Your inner movie becomes the vibration you carry into the world, and the world responds to that vibration. The shift happens when you start noticing the movie instead of acting in it blindly. When you see that a fear is just a scene playing in your mind, not a prophecy. When you recognize that a worst-case scenario is just an old pattern, not reality. And the moment you catch the movie, even for a second, you can change it. You can rewrite the scene. You can choose a different outcome. You can direct your mind instead of letting your mind direct you. Your inner movie isn't just entertainment. It's the blueprint for your energetic state. And your energetic state is the blueprint for your outer reality. The mind has one habit it never gets tired of: repeating itself. It repeats thoughts not because they're accurate, but because they're familiar. It repeats emotions not because they match the moment, but because they match the past. These repetitions form subconscious loops, invisible cycles that shape how you think, feel, and react without you realizing it. You might notice it in small, everyday moments. You wake up with the same concern you had yesterday. You assume a conversation will go badly before it even starts. You react to a simple comment with more emotion than it deserves. None of this happens because the present moment demands it. It happens because the loop is running, and your mind follows the path it knows best. These loops drain more energy than physical work ever could. They lock you into predictable patterns, the same worries, the same insecurities, the same emotional highs and lows. And because they run in the background, you don't question them. You believe the thoughts must be true because they feel familiar. But familiar doesn't mean real, it only means repeated. American life strengthens these loops even more. Constant pressure, rapid schedules, and digital overstimulation keep the mind busy but not aware. You move from one reaction to the next without noticing who started the cycle. Before long, you're not thinking, you're repeating. You're not responding, you're running old emotional programs. But here's the shift that changes everything. You cannot break a loop by fighting it. Fighting gives it more attention, and attention gives it more energy. The loop becomes stronger. The real power comes from noticing it. When you observe the loop, when you say to yourself, I've had this thought before, or this feeling isn't new, the spell weakens. The reaction slows. The automatic pathway loses its force. In that moment of awareness, you create space. And inside that space, something new can emerge. A different thought, a calmer breath, a gentler interpretation. These small changes form new neural pathways, new emotional patterns, new energetic signatures, not all at once but gradually and naturally, the same way the old loops were formed. Breaking subconscious loops is not about becoming a different person. It's about reclaiming the energy that has been trapped in repetition. It's about seeing your mind clearly enough to choose something new. Once you recognize a loop, you're no longer inside it. You're outside watching. And the moment you become the observer, the loop is no longer in control. Most people grow up imagining energy as something that travels like water in a pipe. You send it here, direct it there, push it forward, or pull it back. But modern science and deeper spiritual understanding show something very different. Energy isn't traveling anywhere. It's already present everywhere. What we call movement is really a shift in state, a change in how that energy expresses itself in the moment. You can see this clearly in your own body. A single thought can change your entire chemistry in seconds. One memory can tighten your chest. One hopeful idea can relax your face and soften your breath. Nothing physically traveled from one part of your body to another. The energy simply shifted state, from calm to tense, or from fear to clarity, because of what your mind focused on. Even your breath proves this. When you take a slow inhale, your heart rhythm changes. Your nervous system adjusts. Your emotional state shifts, not because air carried energy into you, but because the act of breathing changed the internal conditions your system responds to. A belief works the same way. If you believe things will go wrong, your body curves inward and your shoulders tighten. If you believe you can handle what comes, your posture opens, your eyes lift, and your energy shifts toward confidence. Nothing was pushed, nothing was pulled, the state changed. American life often teaches people to push through, force it, or make it happen. But energy doesn't respond to force, it responds to alignment. When you try to push energy, you end up fighting your own system. But when you shift your inner state even slightly, everything becomes easier. You breathe differently, you think differently. Your nervous system switches modes. Your emotional frequency rises or falls depending on what you tune into. The truth is simple. You don't move energy. You create the conditions that allow it to shift. Clarity can appear in a single moment when something inside you clicks into a new state. Peace can replace anxiety when your system feels safe again. Strength can appear when your focus turns toward possibility instead of fear. The energy was always there. You just changed the state you were accessing. When you understand this, you stop wasting effort trying to force yourself into calm, confidence, or motivation. Instead, you make small internal adjustments that invite those states naturally. A shift in breath, a shift in attention, a shift in interpretation, a shift in belief, and suddenly the entire energetic landscape inside you responds. Energy follows state. State follows awareness. And awareness is something you can guide. Awakening isn't a lightning strike. It isn't a dramatic voice from the sky or a sudden burst of enlightenment. It's quieter than that and much more real. Awakening is the moment you realize how much of your life has been running on autopilot. You start noticing how many choices you made out of habit instead of intention, how many emotions you carried that didn't even come from the present moment, and how many beliefs you accepted simply because someone else handed them to you. When this clarity hits, it feels less like discovering something new and more like finally seeing something that was always there. The illusion isn't mystical, it's practical. It's the mental filter you've lived behind without noticing. It's the emotional loops that replay the same reactions again and again. It's the memory imprints in your body that whisper old messages into new moments. These hidden patterns create a version of reality that feels real because you've lived inside it for so long. But once you start seeing them, you realize they weren't truth, they were conditioning. American life makes the illusion easier to miss. You're encouraged to stay busy, stay productive, stay distracted, and stay focused outward. But awakening pulls your attention inward. You begin seeing the difference between what's happening and what your mind tells you is happening. You notice when fear makes a decision for you. You notice when an old story shapes a new reaction. You recognize the moments when your nervous system jumps into the past even though you're physically in the present. This clarity isn't about blaming yourself. It's about reclaiming yourself. You can't change patterns you can't see. But the moment you recognize the illusion, even for a second, the spell breaks. You stop responding from old wounds and start responding from awareness. You stop repeating cycles and start choosing direction. You stop confusing familiar reactions with truth and start seeing truth with your own eyes. Seeing the illusion doesn't instantly free you from it, but it gives you the power to step out of it one choice at a time. Awareness becomes the light that shines through the cracks, revealing the patterns you once mistook for your identity. And once you see the pattern, you're no longer trapped inside it. Awakening is simply seeing clearly and choosing differently. Real awakening isn't about running away from life or pretending to rise above it. It's about moving through the everyday American world, work, bills, family, traffic, pressure, with a different kind of awareness. It's recognizing that your inner state is the source of your experience, not the outside noise. You begin to understand that your attention isn't just something you use. It's something that actively shapes the quality of your life. Wherever you consistently place it becomes the tone of your reality. Once you see that emotions form your internal frequency, you start treating them as signals instead of problems. You stop denying what you feel and start learning from it. You notice how certain thoughts drain your energy while others lift it. You see how fear pulls your frequency down and how presence raises it. You watch how your body responds the moment you shift your focus or calm your breath. Awakening becomes something practical, a skill you can actually use in real time. Awareness becomes your anchor. Instead of reacting to everything automatically, you create a small pause inside yourself. That pause becomes power. It gives you room to choose a different response, a new interpretation, a healthier direction. This is where transformation happens, not in rare mystical moments, but in these small, daily shifts. You start noticing that you're no longer pushed around by old patterns. You're guiding your energy from the inside out. True awakening is remembering that energy isn't something you force or chase. It's something you align with. When you shift your attention, your energy shifts. When you shift your breath, your chemistry shifts. When you shift your interpretation, your emotional frequency changes. You're not trying to control life. You're learning to steer your internal state so you can meet life from clarity instead of survival mode. And slowly, your outer world begins to change to match your inner one. Stress feels different. Conversations feel different. Problems feel different. You move through situations with more space inside you, more ease, more presence. You're no longer living reactively, waiting for life to hit you. You're living consciously, shaping the energy you bring into each moment. This is the real beginning, not an escape from life, but a new way of living it. A way rooted in awareness, intention, and clarity. A way where you reclaim the energy that was always yours.